Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Wednesday, the 7th of May. It is happy 9 in a row day as well. We'll get stuck into that shortly, but Joshua Barry joins us after his well-earned break. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, going not bad, mate. How are you? Holding the ship very admirably in my absence.
Yeah, it's all good. I did chuckle thinking if you were tuning in on your travels to me and Chris talking about Jar Jar Binks on Monday. That's what the review is all about. Some of the big subjects discussed on this show on a weekday morning. But it is 9 in a row day. Of course, it's 28 years since Brian Laudrup bulleted a header past Steve Dykstra to help Rangers go on and win a 9th title in a row, one of the greatest days in the club's history. I'm keen on this show, folks, to hear what you were doing on that fateful day. I was listening to the game on the radio, and joyous day it was. So please let us know where you were, what you were doing when Laudrup scored that fateful goal. Before we talk about the here and now and get stuck right in, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors, S1 Jobs. If you're looking to hand in your transfer request, folks, head over to S1 Jobs, upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Right, where shall we start then? Lots to discuss and get their teeth stuck into, Joshua. Before we get on to, you've got a piece coming out on the website tomorrow, sort of ties in with the piece that Chris had on the website yesterday. We'll talk about the manager situation in a minute. What was your thoughts on Sunday before we dive into that?
Bit dull. Bit of a dull game. I thought that Rangers. It's hard to actually form new opinions of Old Firm games there and a game at this stage in the season. But I thought it was another game, and we'll maybe touch on this with what type of manager Rangers need. Rangers looked kind of comfortable, got pushed back a bit. It was an interesting tactic using Dessers off that kind of left-hand side. Obviously, came good because he got his goal. A few good individual performances. Raskin, I think, was comfortably the best midfielder on that park on the day. Thought Liam Balogun had one of his best games in a long time. Thought Nadeem Barami was pretty good in that number 10 position, getting up and down the pitch. Apart from that, not a lot stood out to me. I don't think there's a lot we learned that was new. Rangers shaded the expected goals if people care about that. So I think it was another example of one of these games where Rangers are fine in games where they have like 35% of the ball. The difficulty is that is not the majority of their games. I don't know how you saw it. I'm sure you've hashed out your opinions plenty since then, but fair that there was nothing that new in it.
Decent first half, second half, not so much, and just fortunate to come away with a draw and after a bit of a gaff and the final dying embers of the game.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Liam Kelly for avoiding what would have been a dreadful outcome. Had Dyson made even picked out that lad Johnny Kenny for a tap in, but a point. I think we all just want the season to end now. Get these 3 games out of the way, and let's look forward. And look forward we shall. It's fair to say Chris's piece yesterday got a lot of tongues wagging, a lot of comments on social media and the likes. Certainly a line in his piece with regards to the new manager that Rangers will be looking to bring in. Joshua, it's understood that you won't have a previous Rangers connection. That a good thing for you? It sort of discounts a Steven Gerrard return, I guess.
Yeah, definitely a piece worth reading. I think the important thing to stress is it's still, as we understand it, it's not a situation where it's definitive black and white lines, Derek. Everything's off the table and there's maybe been a clear candidate from the start. But what I would say about the managerial situation is, even if you compare it to when Gerrard came in the first time around, there's a couple of things to say. There's a lot of voices now, and there's going to be a lot of voices going into the new season. So while the Rangers manager, whoever they appoint as manager, is going to be important, and of course we'll talk about it today, they hold such a key role in this rebuild, they won't I think it won't have the same sort of significance as it has. And what I mean by that is if you look at even just recently Philippe Clement or Michael Beale, they have been the predominant football voice in different ways. Recruitment or the more in Clement's role, just kind of the only football real voice at the top of the club, who was able to, I guess, make decisions and have a sporting director ahead of him. You're not going to have that now. It's not going to be a case of let's really entrust the manager to get us out of this situation. It's going to be a case of let's entrust the manager, but he's a part of the plan rather than the whole plan, if that makes sense. I think the difficulty with going back, and this ties into the discussion we had about James Tavernier. When was it? That podcast went out on Saturday.
Yeah.
Thought he struggled at the weekend for what it's worth. That's a kind of performance we've seen before against Maida. It's difficult to start a new regime by going backwards to get a name. And if Rangers were to do that, then I think it would be a difficult sell in their whole managerial hunt if they did go back to someone they'd had before. I think Steven Gerrard would bring obvious benefits. Personally, I think I think his time at the club, while imperfect, I'm probably more on the optimistic side of where it would have went or the overall view of it, as opposed to he only won one trophy and that's kind of the end of it. Do you take my point? I don't know if you agree that it's difficult for the new regime to come in, have all these new voices, Greta Steinsen, Andrew Kavanagh, Parag Marathi, along with those who are already there at the moment, Kevin Thelwell, and then go back to a man that had been here before, especially because if you think back to when Gerrard came in first time, it was himself, it was Mark Allen at the start, and it was Dave King, and there was influential figures in the boardroom. But it's a very different setup now, isn't it? And a very different sort of structure. I don't think you're going to see a case of the club throwing all their eggs into a managerial basket as they've had to, or maybe not had to, but as they have done over the past few appointments. Because ultimately, we've seen how that turns out. Rarely, if you put all your eggs into one managerial basket, you're going to be left with quite a mess to clean up, which has been the case quite repeatedly.
Yeah, I said it before. I wasn't too overly keen on a Gerrard return. Listen, it may work if Rangers gave him the call. Who knows? Who can look into the future? But given what he has, I was going to say achieved, but how he has failed in his jobs after Rangers, it sort of doesn't fill me with a belief that he can come in and sort of reignite this Rangers squad. But who knows? He has done it before, of course, so that there is that. But I thought it was interesting, that line that Rangers may be looking out with. My only concern with that is, and again, I've said it numerous times, we cannot have another guy that is set in his ways that is no idea what the demands of Rangers are and the expectation levels, that is quite happy to go up to Dens Park and come away with a point and think that's a good result. We cannot have that. We need a guy that can beat teams that make it hard against Rangers, and it's been a real bugbear for many. The previous managers haven't been able to find a solution to beat these low blocks and deal with the physicality that Scottish football throws up. So it has to be somebody that is able to contend with that, Joshua. So it's difficult to identify someone out there that would be able to come in and sort that out immediately.
Do you think it needs to be someone with exposure, experience to Scottish football? Are you in that camp, or are you?
Not really, no.
No. I think. Well, I'll put it back to you. What do you think Rangers' big? Let's just take this season in isolation. What do you think Rangers' biggest issue has been domestically? And there's been quite a lot of them, so it's maybe hard to narrow it down into one.
Well, defensively, they're not physical enough. I've said this many times. They don't have a profile of player that you need when you go to difficult venues. So I think they need someone like that. The style of play is an issue. I don't think it suits Scottish football in the main. And Philippe Clement was very set in his ways, wasn't he? He's someone that was steadfast and wasn't willing to change. In fact, he said in a press conference once that it would take too many training sessions to start working on a different style. Rangers cannot afford to have a manager like that, Joshua.
Yeah, well, they need a style. They didn't have a style. I don't think they didn't have a real style under Clement. Of course, to a degree, they did. But this is again the issue with, if you bring a manager in, and we spoke about this a lot at the time that Clement was dismissed, that kind of lack of scrutiny on what exactly his playing style was when he was appointed. So he'd speak about, led to believe he spoke about this in his interviews, a dominant style of playing and an attacking style of play. And he believed that. And that's, he's won with it before. He made those comments about Mourinho, which Mourinho found out about or responded to in his first press conference over there in Istanbul, didn't he? But I think there was a big confusion with, okay, what's the difference between a dominant style of play and a ball dominant style of play? So Clement wouldn't talk about things that most managers do now, which is like, how do we have territory in the opposition half, or lots of passes to push them back? It was about winning duels was the thing he came back to all the time, verticality. And you're right, he kind of had this idea and he stuck with it, and he didn't move at all. So even when he didn't have wingers, which I think was that's what undone Rangers in last season's title race, because Clement tried to do so many round pegs and square holes. You think back to, I think it was Tom Lawrence, Kieran Dowell, and someone else in midfield up at Ross County when they conceded more counter-attacks than ever. Playing players out of position on the Fabio Silva as a left winger, Dujon Sterling as a right winger, rather than maybe adapting a little bit, as we've seen Barry Ferguson do. However, if you look at the numbers, which we'll get onto a little bit and are included in this piece, the underlying numbers haven't improved since Clement left in the league. They've got worse in terms of the chances Rangers are conceding on average and the chances they're creating. So you could say that Ferguson is a pragmatic coach because he changes formations a lot. He's not stuck to one overall idea. He'll say stuff quite a lot, but he doesn't care how Rangers win. He doesn't care how much the ball they have. They just have to win, which is all well and good. And arguably in big games, that has served them pretty well. You think of his record in Old Firm games, getting past Fenerbahce. They were unlucky against Athletic Club. It wasn't a heavy beating. But again, you watch Rangers at the moment, Derek, and I don't think you could like identify them by an overall style, or, if two teams were playing and they didn't have kits on, there's not like passages of play that you think that's a Rangers team. Where if you go back to Gerrard's team over 3 years and you think of different patterns, you'd be able to identify them by that. So what they need from me is a manager who, the first question I'd be going on is not so much about stature or how they're going to lead the club, because I think that void will also be held by other people. It's how can you control games, even before low blocks? How can you control games? And that's something Rangers have not done all season with the ball. They've been a team who look more uncomfortable with the ball than without it, and that for me is your predominant issue. So I don't think they need so much we can get quite caught up in the pragmatic and dogmatic approach. I don't think they need one extreme or the other. Of course, all good managers need a bit of flexibility. They need someone with an overall idea that can develop players, because that has just been totally absent this season.
It certainly has. First of all, before we dive into some of the comments, a big thank you to Tino, who's gifted 5 Rangers Review memberships. That's very kind of you, Tino. Thank you for that. There's an interesting point. David McLean says Big Ange came into Scottish football recruited with a clear style. He had no Scottish football experience. We just need an experienced manager with clear ideas and an identity. And I like this. Timothy says, look at PSG. Played poor up until January. Luis Enrique changed tactics, formations, etc. weekly. Stumbled upon a formation, and look at them now. Yeah, go and give Luis Enrique a call. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Some of the names that have been mentioned, I've seen some. Martin says, what about Tedesco? Ewan says, I'm not against the heavy metal German style Marco Rosa may bring. Still a punt low. Loudrup says, let's give it Zinedine a shout. Listen, that's it. The issue with a foreign manager, if you like, Joshua, and there was a comment actually that came in from John who says, do European managers work in Scottish football? Off the top of my head, the only guys from abroad that have won the title in Scotland, Advocat, Wim Janssen won it for Celtic. Ange, of course, won it for Celtic as well. Ronnie Dyler won it. Rangers weren't in the division at that point, though. So it's not, in terms of Rangers, though, Advocat's the only one that's lifted a title that's been from foreign shores. when you asked me there, does it have to be someone with an understanding and experience of Scottish football? Do you think that's an important factor? Would you like someone that is well aware of the uniqueness of the game up here?
Nah, not really. I don't think people will be surprised at that mundane view, but I think it is as simple as you pulled up a comment a couple of seconds ago about Celtic's recruitment. We've made this point so many times, but think since like 2021, largely Celtic have made mistakes in the recruitment. They've probably overspent on certain players, but they've recruited to one rough like overall game model. Changed a little bit maybe between Postecoglou and Rodgers, but they play that 4-3-3. There's a little bit of variation in how maybe Schlupp plays a left-back role to Greg Taylor, so they have flexibility. But roughly, they've had one idea that they're recruiting for. Okay, their managers have a lot of influence. They don't have a director of football, but they've had the money to get in better managers than Rangers. And that allows them to develop players. Someone like Matt O'Reilly, who they sold for 25 million. Think how many different ideas, recruitment strategies, visions Rangers have had since 2021, Derek, how they flip-flopped from... we've made the point 100 times, so I won't go back to it. But whatever they go for, and this is why it has to be bigger than a manager, because Rangers could appoint a manager who's got great pedigree. He's a bit of bad luck in his first month. He's on the back foot, and they've recruited just for his style. They sack him, and suddenly what's happened before is they appoint a manager with a different style, like Clement after Beale. It takes time for the squad to catch up maybe with what he wants, arguably never did. And then you just start that cycle again. You're catching up with yourself. So the point as well about consistency, PSG finding a consistent formation. I've not been on top of PSG this season, so I don't know how accurate that is, but I'll presume what he means is they kind of stuck with one formation.
Play good stuff. They play good.
Yeah, they are quite a good team. Rangers best, and people will see this in the piece we put out, the expected goal difference. That's what Kevin Thelwell was talking about in the podcast people have watched. What's the difference between the chances you create on average and you concede on average? Just a really helpful barometer that people will use. Rangers' best period came when they were playing Danilo and Egaman over the Christmas spell, and they had a bit of... Hadji was off the left, kind of moving inside. Yeah. Cherney on the right. They had a bit of consistency in what they were doing. That's probably the only... I think they stumbled upon it. I don't think it was a tactical masterstroke by Clement. I think it was Danilo and Egaman in particular improving things. But it was a bit of consistency for a period of time, and no wonder that improvements followed. But I'll throw a couple of stats at you, Derek, right, which I think will illuminate this point. So again, expected goals difference. If people are shouting at their screen and they don't like XG, just remember when you say he should have scored that 9 times out of 10, or he can't. That's all expected goals is. It's probability. It's looking at the averages. Yeah. So Rangers' expected goals difference, again, the difference between the chances they create and they concede, is at 0.83 at the moment. And that's the lowest it's been since before the 2018-19 season. So that's lower than Gerrard's first season, which was 0.9. So it's such a small difference, which means that even if their chance creation in certain games is all right, because they're conceding a lot of chances at the other end, they're they've not improved. They're creating a little bit less than last season, and they're conceding a little bit more, so that distance gets tighter. But again, that I mentioned it at the start of the show, against Celtic at the weekend, they created, their expected goals was higher, but Celtic's expected goals difference over the whole season is 1.44, which is almost double Rangers 0.83. So there's your issue. It's not big games. It's the fact that Celtic can go away to these different grounds and control matches and not concede that much to the other end. And just one more for a bit of a spectrum on this. Rangers highest expected goals difference in the past 6 seasons, Derek, is 1.27. So that's what their highest has been over the course of a whole season, which is a fair bit lower than Celtic 1.44 this season. Only twice since 2018 have Celtic dropped below 1.2, which is roughly Rangers' best number. So that shows you, I think, that they've had a rough, consistent game model that's worked over time domestically, whereas Rangers have been just behind. And when Kevin Thelwell and others are picking the next Rangers manager, these are the type of nuances that I think Rangers have lacked when they've appointed recent managers, that they have to have the expertise to look at that from above and say, as what was the case with Clement at the end, is this trending in the right direction? Is it not? Because it's a pattern that we've seen for so many seasons now, and it's not about luck, is it?
Yeah, it's a huge job. There's no doubt about it, and it's what Peter Lovenkrands has said as well. I'll read you some of his quotes. You can see on the website this morning, folks, about the task that the new owners face this summer. So I don't even think it's just the players. I think it's the whole club, from the staff and all that. There's a big overhaul that needs to be done all the way through the club, from what I can see from the outside and the things I'm hearing. So it's a big task ahead for whoever gets the job, whoever has to go in and put their own stamp on things and try to change things. It's going to be big. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what direction they're going to go in, because I think there's a lot of changes that need to be made. Again, it's all depending on the change of ownership because of the funding and stuff. But that said as well, even if there is a change of ownership, there's also fair play rules for money spent. You can't just go and buy anybody you want. You have to go and play under the rules, so it's not going to be easy. There's also players you don't want to leave. You probably have to, but don't want to. There's a lot of obstacles in the way, I think. It's a really tough task ahead for whoever gets the nod in that way. Quite a lengthy interview there, folks. You go and check it out in its entirety over on the website. Listen, there's no doubt about it. Is it a big summer ahead? It's so many holes needing plugged, and at least the sporting director has been confirmed, and I think the manager is probably the next in line, you would imagine, to be put in place, and then the squads will take shape. I've seen some suggesting it. Well, I think you've suggested as well, Josh, it will take two, maybe 3 windows for Rangers to sort of weed out some of the underperforming players and then sort of revamp the squad. I've seen someone on social media this morning saying it took Advocat just 1 summer to go on and win the treble. So it can be done.
It can be done. Yeah, it would take a very good season.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of change, a lot of movement, and I don't think it's improbable that a new manager is appointed. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but I don't think it's improbable a new manager is appointed before the official confirmation of the takeover. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah.
It was also put to me, I was speaking to someone recently who said, and this isn't a really important thing to consider on the new managers, is that certain clubs have certain styles that will work, and certain fan bases will be more amenable to different styles. So would Russell Martin's style of play and his teams play some of the highest number of passes per game, would that work at Ibrox? Or would Marco Rose's front-footed, aggressive football that plays into space a little bit more quickly but still controls the ball, would that work slightly more? And I think the latter is a fair point. Do you know what I mean? That certain clubs, certain styles will work better. And I think if I was to ask you whose football would Ibrox enjoy more, Russell Martin's or Marco Rose? Speaking hypothetically, probably say Rose, no?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because Ewan flagged this earlier. He says, what's Josh's opinion on Marco Rose, of course? Are you a fan of him? Do you think that could work, possibly?
Well, you just look at where he's worked, Dortmund and Leipzig recently. And again, I think in the past we've maybe been a bit guilty, Derek, of thinking, but this is a case of Clement. They don't play against low blocks every week, and there is some truth in that. But increasingly, like you see when Motherwell came to Ibrox recently, it's not a case of they sat camped around the edge of the penalty box and Rangers couldn't break them down. They actually pressed Rangers quite aggressively that day, and Rangers didn't have the solutions to get out. Look at the weekend. Like Liam Kelly's was going long a lot, and Rangers were going over the press. That's all very well and good in a game where someone like Celtic presses you, but in games where they don't, where you have to find solutions to build through the pitch. I think that is as much Rangers' issue as kind of creating solutions in the final third, breaking down teams. So I'm more amenable to the thought of someone like Rose than maybe a couple of years ago, because he's obviously an elite level coach. Okay, he's failed at Leipzig, but I think it's a step up from the type of jobs even that Clement had worked at. And then I guess it's up to in a situation like that, it would be up to those Stelwell and others in that Steinson in that interview process to say, well, how is that style of play going to translate in Scottish football? I'm sure you've spoken about him, but is he someone you think?
Well, this point sort of sums it up for me. Listen, I get he's worked at big clubs, but Nicky says both us and Celtic have beat Marco Rose sides in the last few years. Obviously has a better side than both. Not a good look. Yeah, that would be my issue. If he had been successful at Dortmund, done really well, would Rangers be able to get him? Who knows? I'm not too sure. Again, I've said it before, I've got sort of Clement alarm bells ringing in my head about Marco Rose with if Rangers were to appoint him, would he be the right fit? But you could possibly say that about many others. Someone mentioned Tedesco earlier on. I know when he was at Leipzig, everyone's looking, he's at the next best thing. His career sort of stumbled since then. He never had a good time at Belgium. I think he's still out of work, if I'm not mistaken.
And also, Derek, do you know what? One that got away, Farioli, was someone that Rangers had spoken to in the past. And you look at what I believe he's on the cusp of winning the league with Ajax, might have already done so. That would have been. I'd have liked that.
But again, these guys are doing really well. I mean, Clement had done well. I looked at that at the time, thinking that's a bit of a coup getting Clement and a guy that's won titles in Belgium. Never quite worked at Monaco, of course, but was unable to adapt to Scottish football. And listen, the names that have been mentioned, I've said it before. There's yet to be a name that stood out ahead of the rest that you think, go and get that guy.
It's also about what's I think. Sorry, George, and Edin Terzic's also like Champions League final a couple of seasons ago, wasn't he? So he's also someone with that type of pedigree. But it's not just this applies to Clement. We're really critical of Clement at the end. See if he'd come into the club with a sporting director there, someone to properly critique him, maybe push back on certain decisions.
Yeah.
If he'd come in with arguably a stronger coaching staff, because he was leading a lot of it at the training centre, and again, people maybe suggest that he needed. That's obviously Sam Shirai eventually came in, but he needed that someone alongside him to provide a little bit more in certain situations. If he'd come into a squad that maybe was slightly stronger, so of course, did he do a good job over time? No, but it's also, I think, look at the wider picture and look at what is going to allow a manager to succeed. The new manager that's coming in at Rangers faces a far brighter prospect than this time last year. Yeah, and it's a job with a lot of excitement and anticipation and possibility. But it's not just about what has this manager done? Is it going to be another Clement? I think it's looking at all the things that surround that, the support structure around them, and because the best manager in the world, I think, would struggle with aspects of Rangers in recent years. Honestly, I do, because the club has just had so much instability, and luckily it looks like that's going to end. We'll see.
I think having a sporting director in there is huge. And interestingly, I've seen sort of deviating away from Rangers. I've seen the Plymouth boss recently in a press conference once they were relegated, Miron Muslic, who I think is a very highly rated coach down there, gave Plymouth a fighting chance of staying up. But Wayne Rooney's car crash of a stint there sort of put paid to any hopes he had of staying in the Championship. But he said that he's had to come in there, no sporting director. He's had to do a lot of things that a head coach shouldn't be doing. And I sort of just harked back to Philip Clement when he came out in that press conference, and he said similar. So I think it's vitally important in the modern game that structure is in place. So looks like Rangers are starting to get their house in order with regards to that. But if we hear of anything, folks, that you will hear from us as well. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and also to the website. And that brings me nicely on to the website, because we've got a wonderful offer on at this moment in time. We have these at various points throughout the year. But we're giving away a signed and framed Ali McCoy's jersey, the one that he's wearing on your screen. Here's Joshua with there we go. So you can win that jersey by signing up to the Rangers Review. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk /subscribe to sign up. Only £1 for 6 months, which is utterly incredible value in itself. But you also get entered into the hat for that McCoist jersey. Now, existing subscribers automatically entered into the draw. You have, I think it's until, is it midnight on the 12th of May, Joshua?
I think so, yes. I think so. The terms, sorry, it has been one of those weeks, but the terms and conditions are at the bottom of the article that's linked in the comments. If you're a subscriber, you're automatically entered. But yeah, everything that we do is always on the website first. It's the best way to support us. If you like tuning in every morning, we really appreciate that people do. And I think it's fair to say, Derek, it is going to be a hectic summer for all of us at Rangers Review HQ. But we're looking forward to doing it all again with everyone as part of the Rangers Review subscription base. So yeah, do head over, take advantage of that, and we will let you know who's won it at the start of next week.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Big thank you to Joshua, as ever, and thank you to you all for tuning in to the show. It's much appreciated. Enjoy your Wednesday, whatever you are doing, and we'll speak to you again tomorrow morning. Bye for now.